This is Mahesh Ravi, and in this video, we are going to take a look at a design style, and we're going to talk about that. So, the design style that we are going to discuss is called Brutalism. So, what exactly is Brutalism? You might have seen a lot of examples of Brutalism recently, and to understand it really easily, I will just tell you a definition for it. It's brutally honest design. So, when you're designing something, we have this tendency to beautify a lot of things, hide our imperfections. Even if it's an image that we are using in our design, we try to correct them. We try to, correct the image. We try to hide the artifacts. We try to erase things which we don't want it to be there. We sort of create a behind the scene wall where the viewer might not be able to see how messy our backside is, but they will only be looking at the front end, which is beautiful. So, brutalism is the moment where we are actually showing how ugly the back end of our design is. It's being very honest. We are giving them the raw version of how things should actually look. Now, this doesn't have to be always honest, as it is saying in this definition. We can fake the behind the scene look. So that's how brutalist movement came into. To understand this very simply, you might have seen buildings where normal houses, they will use bricks, and on top of that they will have a layer of cement, and they will have coatings of paints to see to have a more finished perfect look to the building. But there was a movement where you would actually see buildings with bricks showing out. So the bricks will be the final look of the it will be there in the final look of the building, and that is a brutal approach. We are being very honest that okay, our house was made with bricks. You might have seen offices which actually uses this warehouse design in their office layout, where wires of HVAC, the pipes and everything is showing outside. The electrical wiring is showing in outside and all that. So that's a brutal approach. There are certain coffee shops that I've seen where there are no false ceiling, and it actually shows the wiring that goes through the top of the building. So these are, in architecture, this is what is brutalism. And when it comes to digital design, we can actually use that as well. Today, what I want to show is that how to simply understand brutalism in graphic design and how to implement that in one of your designs. So let's take a look at two examples here, right? So I'm just going to show you these two examples, right? So these are two different examples of brutalism. So on the left side, what you see here is a poster. And how is this brutal? This is brutal because it actually shows you that this is a digital design by choosing a typeface which shows pixels in them. So we know that this is actually created using a computer where things are digital there. So it's sort of not hiding that digital, because we might not use a typeface in a normal graphic design where we don't want pixels to be shown, right? But we are actually in brutalist approach, we are showing the pixels and we are using it, as a style. So this is a digital way of showing, okay, we actually created this digitally. Now on the right side, you can see the same thing where it is a brutalist design. Now, how is this a brutalist design? We can actually see the grids that the designers used to write this text. You can see the grid which is actually there. So normally in a regular graphic design, we will hide this layer or we will erase this after this text is designed. But in a brutalist design, we are showing that okay, that's there. This is how we did the design, and that's a really interesting approach to design. And this is by Nike. So this is digital brutalism, and this is analog brutalism. So this was done in paper and all that. So this is just a simple example for you to understand how brutalism works. Now, let me show you how this analog and digital brutalism differs, right? So you can see this, that I've made two versions of this typography here. And this, you can, when you look at it, you can see that there is a lot of analog imperfections there, right? So it looks like it was photographed or photocopied on a used and tired paper, and you can see the texture going on top of that and all that. It's not perfect. I mean, it looks cool. That is why it is a style, but it's not perfect. This is not how, when we are digitally creating a typeface in a normal design, this is not how we will use, the text. But this is how analog brutalism uses it. Analog, right? So this was done with paper. Now, if you look at this, this is digital, an example of digital brutalism. Just like in the example that we saw before, you can see that it's actually showing the pixels, the behind the scene look of this typeface where it's all made of pixels, and we are actually showcasing that, right? So this is digital brutalism. It's a simple example. These are simple examples for you to understand what exactly do you mean by brutalism. And there are so many approaches that you can actually go with, to create this particular effect. I'll show you some more examples here. If you come here, you can see that. So this is something that I already spoke about this, right? The first one in here is analog brutalism, right? So you can see that this has that texture of the paper which is there and it's photographed. It's not clear. There is something raw which is there, right? So if you go here, you can see that it's the pixels are showing. So it's digital brutalism. Now, if you come down here, this is also a type of brutalism. And how is this brutalism, right? It's actually showing a digital slice of a layer with the tag and all those things there, like the slice number and all that. And we are using that as a design element, right? So this is a behind the scene look. We will never see text like this in your finished version of your design render, right? This is something when you are slicing it, the slice tool might actually show you the slices like this, but we are using it. An effective use case of this could be, if you have seen Figma conference design collaterals, they use brutalism in their design, where they actually show every design element as how it would appear in the Figma platform itself. Like when you select a layer, how that layer is going to be appearing, the bounding box of that. They are using those in the design of the Figma conference. I think it's called schema collaterals. Here, there is again another example of analog collateral where it actually seems like it's it's overprinted, right? So it's printed again and again and again on the same surface to make it clear, but it still didn't work out. It's a copy of something and all that, so it's still raw. So these are effects which are not actually raw, but we are sort of faking that raw effect. That's how brutalism works right now in digital design. You can also use analog techniques to actually bring brutalism to your design, but we can easily fake that using the tools that you're using for your regular design purposes. So I hope you understood the basics of brutalism. Now, what we are going to do, and this is completely different from, let's say, anti-design. Anti-design is something where you are going to break the rules of design. Here, we are not breaking the rules of design. We are sort of showing how we did the design, right? So that is the basic characteristics of brutalism, and there are a lot more sub-derivatives of brutalism, and we will talk about that later eventually in another video. But this is how you should actually start understanding brutalism, and how to get started working on them. So what we are going to do now is that we are going to work on a project which uses digital brutalism, right? So let's head over to Photoshop and start working on digital brutalism. So in Photoshop right now, just click a new project. I'm going to choose A4 here, and I'll click create. So we have an A4 document right here. So let's start with the typeface itself, right? So I'm going to just go here and type something. So we'll say life Knowledge. Change the color of it to black. Okay, we have this. I'll just do some basic tweaking on typeface here. So, and we will find an interesting typeface. So I'm going to use this typeface called Humankind, which is actually an interesting typeface. So I'm going to select that. And we have this typeface right now for this. So I'm going to use this. I will put it right here. Let's go in a little closer so that we can see what we are doing, right? So we'll try and bring that analog brutalism into this. So we'll go to window and turn on the layers so that I can see the layers that which are in here. So the first thing that I want to do is that I will be doing a lot of raster effects on this. The things that we do right here might not be possible with a vector tool. So I would advise you to work on Photoshop or any raster based design tool for this. So I'm going to right click on this and I'll convert this into a smart object. So now the text editing capabilities are gone. What we can do is I'm going to add some analog artifacts into it. So the first thing that I want to try and do is to add a blur to it. So I'll go to blur gallery and click on field blur. So this is an interesting blur tool where you can actually pick points here and then adjust the blur for that specific point in here. So I'm going to select, I'm going to add a little blur here in this area, but I want maybe this area to be sharp. And I want little blur here. Maybe, I think that's fine right now, works. So once your blur is done, you can click OK. And that comes in here. So it sort of looks like it's photographed, but it was not fully in focus and it's sort of has a very shallow focus in here itself. So now that we have a layer in here, I'm going to create an empty layer just because I don't want the filters to be, tagging here with that. So I'm going to select both these layers and I will right click and I will convert this to a smart object. So all of this is still again a transparent layer with, the text edit. So I can keep adding effects into that layer without worrying about the smart filters. So I'm going to go to, let's zoom in this a little bit. I'm going to go to filter and I'm going to go to filter gallery here. So this is a really interesting, section here. These are not, might actually look like very silly effects in here, but this can actually add a lot of interesting artifacts to your design. So let's say I'm going to go here and I will go to sketch and let's say graphic pen, right? And you're going to be able to see like there is some, so if you are not able to see the preview, you need to turn on this particular thing in here. You can keep adding effects into this. So you don't have to click OK and come back and then add another filter. You can keep adding filters by using this. So for instance, if I am going to, I'll just change the stroke direction to horizontal. So you have something like this. And you can just tweak how it basically looks, right? So stroke length, maybe something like that. And you can, as I said, you can keep adding effects to it. So I have the second layer selected here. So this is the first one and the second one. So if you turn it off, you can see that. By default, it's sort of like duplicating the previous effect, but you can select this and you can choose another effect on top of it. So if I go to, let's say, another layer, I'll be able to select that. So there are so many effects in here. I'm going to select the tone edges here. And I will just adjust so that the edges are sort of, tone. So you can see that comes in, right? So it's a very basic thing that I've done. And if you click OK, you're going to get this effect in here, right? So now the color basically changed, right? So all you have to do is just to apply a hue saturation filter here, just reduce the saturation and reduce the lightness and you have the text, right? So you have a little bit of distortions on the edges. I'm not sure whether you will be able to see this properly in this monitor, but there is a very, and it's a very subtle effect that we have applied, right? You can go a little too far as well with this. But I have done this. I have created all that effect that I needed. And what I will do is repeat the same step. I'll create an empty layer. I'll select these two and then convert that to a smart object. So again, I don't want that to actually tag. So we have the text like this. Now, the next thing that we have to do is to add a texture to it to add that effect, right? So I'm going to go to say Unsplash, and then we are going to look at textures and patterns, and we can search for textures as well, right? So you'll find a lot of interesting textures here. You can search for, let's say, paper texture, and you will get high quality textures for free from this. You can also use Adobe Stock if you are a Creative Cloud member. Say, yeah, let's try this right now. Okay, I'm going to download this. So once we have that, just put that into our design. So we have that design here, the texture that we used. So sort of align it with the text that we created. So I'm just going to make it fit the whole thing like this. I have that right now. So what I'll use is, I don't want the texture to bleed out of that type area. So I will sort of use the clipping mask by clicking Alt on my keyboard and clicking between the layers so that it gets clipped into that field, right? So now you have the text like this, and you can just play around with the blending mode to create the text effect that you basically want. So I'm just going through it and trying to find what is the best effect that I can get out of this. Maybe this might work, and I might reduce the opacity of it so it sort of gives that effect. But I need the contrast of the texture to be a little more, so I'm going to press levels. I'm going to take levels, and I will just go a little closer with the levels. I don't want that to be so evident, so I can see that the again, the text artifact effect is only on the text, and the rest of the area is sort of clean, right? So we created that sort of brutalism in the text, that it's not actually a digital text, but it was, printed by somebody, or it was taken from a piece of paper and you pasted it over it, right? So we are showing it to people without worrying about what they are thinking, right? Because we are brutally honest. Okay, so we have that going on right now. We have our text effect. Now, we can actually do this, the same thing with images as well. So let's say we are actually using, an image in here. So I'm going to insert an image. Let's go and find out an image. So look for a portrait. And we are placing that to our design. I'm just going to bring it like this. And we're going to keep it here. Right now, as I was saying, right, we can be brutal about the image as well. So all the image artifacts it can get, if the image is overexposed, underexposed, any of those kind of things can be shown in here, right? So image-based errors, that think about, lens errors, lens flares, light leaks, right? Cross printing, or color transfer didn't happen, and all those errors that can happen in photography can be used to say that it's a brutalist design, right? So if you just leave the image like that, it's not brutal, right? Because it's a well composed and well taken image. So for instance, I'm going to just take it, I'm going to crop it like this particular image, and I'm just going to crop it like this. And now so let's say we are going to crop this image, and we're going to use only this part of the image, right? Maybe from here to here. I'm just going to copy that, and we'll hide it. So now what we are doing here is that we created a composition which is photographically wrong, right? This is not how a photographer shoots a picture, but we got we have only this picture and we are showing that this is a brutalist approach, right? So this is not brutalism, but when we actually modified that, we created some error into that design, it became a brutalist design right now. So we can keep adding things to it. Like say we are going to overexpose it, right? Or maybe underexpose it, right? Anything like that, that can be brutalist. So I'm going to just bring it down a bit. I will just go to the contrast adjustments. We'll go to filter. Sorry, image adjustments and brightness and contrast. And I will reduce the contrast a little bit, right? So the contrast is low. Sorry, for that. Maybe the brightness is coming like this. So now what happens here is that there are a lot of errors in the photograph, right? It's not something that normally a person would actually use, right? So we have something like that in here. Let's add something else. I will add a light leak, right? So let's look for a light leak. So light leak is again a photographic error, which is not supposed to happen, but that's, you know, it's an aesthetic effect that adds value to your picture. So I'm going to take this, put it here. Just maybe rotate it like this, scale it up so that it matches with our image, and just change the blending mode of this to screen. So we have that also coming in here, right? So we have that brutalist design happening, right? Now, what we will do is that we will add, again, for the background, right? It still looks pretty neat, right? We don't want that. I'm just going to add a little more, errors to it. Let's say we look for paper artifacts, right? So how can a paper be unclean, right? The background can be creased. It can be having, improper edges, like, all those things that can be that we are showing that we are not cropping it off. We are saying that, okay, the edges of the pages are pretty dirty, right? So let's take a look at that right now. So find something which sort of says that this paper was not perfect. So we'll go to, and we have that particular texture background here, which is, yeah, decent. So I'll just do it like that. I'll just drag it all the way to the background, or maybe, just take this and maybe apply some blending modes. So you can see which actually works. Maybe multiply works. Reduce the opacity a little bit. Okay, so that actually works, right? So there is the paper damage is actually evident there. So we did that, right? So we basically created the whole, three elements that we have with this typography, image, and the background. So we added brutalist honesty. We basically faked it to say that this is our style, right? So you can keep doing this again. So the same thing that I've said. So I want to sort of add some information here. So I'm going to add some text, subtext here, and then use a normal text, something like, okay, no, say click to know more. So this is something that we added. This is a sort of, let's say, call to action or something like that. And I will just reduce the size a little bit to match it with the rest. Okay, we have it. Now, how do you bring a little honest, brutal honesty to this one? We don't have to force it on every element, right? I'm just showing you this because it's an example design. So how can we add this to a body text? This can be, put into, let's say, a sticker, right? So if we say, I'm just, for example, let's say I'm not going to make a sticker. I'll just take a sticker from somewhere. So I have this particular element that I just added here, right? So this, people can understand that, okay, you just pasted it on top of this poster or something like that. So I'm going to use that. I will maybe select these white patches and then delete that. I don't want them. Just clean it up a bit. Okay, so we have this. Let's say you can move it a little to this edge. So what I want to do is that I want to just make that a part of it. So I'm going to put it here. We are being brutally honest about that, right? So we did the poster and all that, and we forgot about putting the call to action, and then finally we put it on a sticker, right? So this is just an example to show you like how you can bring brutalism into your design, right? You can take brutalism and then mix it with other styles if you want. You can keep a part of your design brutalist and then add other elements which doesn't actually which is a normal design approach. You can do a lot of interesting things with it and make your design as beautiful as possible, right? So I hope you understood this, and I'll see you with the next video. Till then, bye. Thank you.